We often think of medieval princesses in terms of fairy tales as beautiful young ladies living in luxurious comfort, wearing fancy gowns and tall, pointy hats, waiting for some knight to rescue them. But the reality was far less romantic and far more dangerous. Between 1200 and 1400, roughly 1/3 of royal women died before age 30, facing arranged marriages, dangerous pregnancies, and political manipulation at every turn. Life for these women wasn't about fairy tales and romance. It was about survival. Here's what life was really like as a medieval princess. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Okay, let's head back to medieval Europe. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously. Adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Alright, so you're waking up in a stone chamber in a castle in 13th century England. First thing that hits you is the cold, not the cute, nippy kind that makes you snuggle deeper into your comforter. This is the kind of cold that stabs right through you, makes your bones ache, the kind that has you seeing your breath in the air before you even open your eyes. Unlike your nice memory foam mattress with its Egyptian cotton sheets, you're lying on a straw-filled mattress. Yeah, actual straw. And it's not alone in there. The rustling you hear? That's the mice. They live in your bed now. Oh, and those little bites you feel? Fleas and bed bugs. Your constant companions that no amount of status can protect you from. The room is nearly pitch black because, surprise, there's no electricity, no light switches to flip, no bedside lamps, just thick darkness, occasionally pierced by a sliver of dawn light from the narrow window slits that let in more cold air than actual sunlight. And the smell. Oh God, the smell. Medieval castles didn't exactly have great ventilation. That musty, damp odour is the stone walls, perpetually wet in England's climate. The sharp tang underneath? That's the chamber pot in the corner because you don't have a bathroom. Not even close. And despite what movies show you, medieval people didn't bathe often, especially not in winter. So there's also the unique funk of unwashed human that permeates everything. Morning, my lady. The voice startles you. Right, you're not alone. Your ladies in waiting sleep in the same room as you. Actually, one of them sleeps at the foot of your bed. She's been there all night, listening to you snore, watching you drool. Privacy? Not a thing for medieval princesses. The woman who spoke, Alice is her name, is already up and moving around. She's stoking the fire that went out during the night, trying to bring some warmth back into the room. She's been awake for at least an hour already, because that's what servants do. They wake before you, sleep after you, and basically exist to make your life function. It's time for morning prayers, my lady, Alice says, helping you sit up. The household is gathering. This isn't optional. No matter how tired you are, no matter if you're sick, no matter what, morning prayers happen every single day. And as the princess, you need to be there. God comes first. Always. That's non-negotiable in medieval life. Alice helps you out of bed. The stone floor is like ice under your bare feet. In fact, the whole ritual of getting dressed is nothing like slipping into some comfy sweats and a t-shirt. Medieval royal clothing was designed to display wealth and status, not for comfort. First comes the linen shift, the only piece of clothing that gets washed with any regularity. Then the kirtle, a long-sleeved dress that laces up the sides or back. Next, a surcoat, an overdress with sometimes ridiculous sleeves that make it impossible to do anything practical without help. Your feet get stuffed into leather slippers that offer zero support and even less warmth. Arms up Alice instructs as she and another lady wrestle you into your clothing. This isn't your everyday outfit either. This is just for morning prayers. You'll change again after you eat, maybe again before midday meal, and definitely before supper if there are guests. Your hair gets a quick brushing, not a thorough one, because that takes too long and prayers wait for no one. Alice quickly braids it and tucks it up under a linen veil. No, not the tall, pointy hat from fairy tales. Those came later and were worn only in specific regions and times. You're wearing something more like a nun's wimple, a cloth that covers your hair, neck, and frames your face, because a woman's hair is considered too tempting, too sensual to be seen. It must be covered in public. "Hurry now," Alice urges, fastening a cloak around your shoulders. "Your father will be displeased if we're late." And that's something you absolutely want to avoid, because your father isn't just your dad. He's the king, or a powerful duke or earl. Either way, he controls literally everything about your life: where you go, what you eat, what you wear, who you talk to, and most importantly, who you'll marry. Displeasing him isn't just about getting grounded. It could mean being sent away to a convent, or worse, married off to someone truly awful as punishment. So you hurry, following Alice through the winding stone corridors of the castle. They're barely warmer than your room, and just as dark. Servants are scurrying about with lit torches and rushlights, trying to bring some illumination to the gloom. The smell gets worse as you pass near the kitchens, a mix of smoke, unwashed bodies, and food that would turn your modern stomach. You reach the castle's chapel just as the bells are ringing. Everyone is already assembled. Your father at the front, of course, with your mother beside him if she's still alive. Childbirth kills a lot of medieval women. Your brothers, if you have any, are near your father. You and any sisters you have stand behind the men, because that's your place. Always behind the men. The chapel is cold too, but at least there are candles, dozens of them, casting a warm glow that almost makes the place feel cozy. Almost. You can still see your breath in the air. The priest begins the prayers in Latin. You understand some of it. You've heard these same prayers every day of your life, after all. But full comprehension isn't expected of you. You're a woman. Your job is to look pious, follow along with the responses, and set a good example for the household. Our Father, who art in heaven. The familiar words roll out in the priest's monotone. These prayers will go on for at least an hour, standing on the cold stone floor in your thin slippers. Your stomach is growling because you haven't eaten yet, but that doesn't matter. God first, always. I know what you're thinking. This sucks, right? Where's the glamour? Where are the handsome knights and the fancy tournaments? Well, that stuff exists, but it's not the day-to-day reality. The day-to-day is cold, boring, uncomfortable, and rigidly structured. Morning prayers finally end, and you're allowed to go to the hall for breakfast. But don't get excited. Medieval breakfast isn't pancakes and bacon. It's probably bread. Dense, coarse bread, nothing like our fluffy modern loaves, with maybe some ale, yes, even in the morning. Or watered wine if you're lucky, maybe some cheese if it's available, maybe an egg if the chickens are laying well. That's it. And you don't eat alone. The hall is full of people, soldiers, servants, clerks, visitors. Everyone eats together, with your family at the high table at the front of the room, elevated above everyone else. Privacy? Still not a thing. "My lady, your father wishes to speak with you after the meal," Alice whispers as she refills your cup with watered wine. Your stomach clenches, and not from hunger. When your father wants to speak with you, it's rarely good news. It usually means there's been a development in your marriage negotiations, because that's what you are to your family: a valuable political asset, a tool to forge alliances, secure peace treaties, or gain lands through marriage. Your personal feelings on the matter? Completely irrelevant. "Do you know what it's about?" you whisper back. Even though ladies aren't supposed to gossip at the table, Alice shakes her head. "No, my lady, but there was a messenger from France last night." France. That could mean anything. An alliance with France would be prestigious, but it would mean leaving England, leaving everything and everyone you know, to go live in a foreign court where you don't speak the language, don't know the customs, and will be viewed with suspicion as a foreigner. The food in your mouth suddenly tastes like ashes. You're 13 years old, just 13. In your time, you'd be in middle school, worried about homework and friends and maybe your first crush. Here, you're already of marriageable age. Girls can be betrothed as infants, married at 12, the minimum age set by the church, and expected to start bearing children as soon as possible after that. Speaking of bearing children, that's your main purpose as a princess. Your education, limited as it is compared to your brothers, has been geared toward making you a good wife and mother. You've been taught to manage a household, basic medicinal skills, needlework, maybe some music, if your family values those accomplishments. Reading, possibly, though not all noble women were literate. Writing, less commonly. Languages, if you're expected to make a foreign match. You've also been taught, since you were old enough to understand, that your body doesn't belong to you. It belongs to your family until marriage, then to your husband after. Its purpose is to produce heirs, preferably male ones, and childbirth in the medieval period, it's basically a death sentence for many women. No modern medicine, no understanding of germs or infection, no pain relief beyond herbs and prayer. Women died in childbirth all the time, from bleeding, infection, exhaustion. Even queens and princesses with the best care available died regularly this way. And if you survived one birth, you were expected to go through it again, and again, as many times as it took to produce enough sons to secure the lineage. The meal ends, and your father motions for you to follow him to his private chamber. This is it. Whatever news came from France, you're about to hear it. And whatever it is, you have no say in the matter. Your life is not your own. As you walk behind your father through the corridors, you pass a window that looks out over the castle grounds. For just a moment, you catch a glimpse of two young squires practicing swordplay in the yard below. They're laughing, free in a way you'll never be. They get to learn fighting, strategy, horsemanship, all things forbidden to you because you're female. Their futures will be determined largely by their own abilities and choices. Yours was determined the moment you were born female and royal. The heavy wooden door to your father's chamber creaks open and you're ushered inside. Unlike your sparse sleeping chamber, this room shows the true wealth of your family. Tapestries line the walls, keeping out drafts while displaying hunting scenes and family crests. A fire roars in the hearth, making this the warmest room in the castle. Your father has a desk, an actual piece of furniture dedicated just to writing and business, covered with parchments, quills, and his personal seal. "Daughter," he says, not bothering with your name. Medieval fathers, especially royal ones, weren't exactly the warm, fuzzy type. The King of France has proposed a match between you and his second son, Philip. And there it is, your future decided. You don't know this Philip, you've never met him. You don't know if he's kind or cruel, handsome or ugly, smart or stupid. None of that matters. What matters is that France is powerful, and this alliance would benefit your family politically. The terms are favourable, your father continues, as if discussing the sale of a horse rather than your entire life. Your dowry will include the Northern Territories, and in return we will receive trade rights through French ports. You're 13, you've never left England, you don't speak French, and now you're expected to leave everything behind, go to a foreign country, marry a stranger, sleep with him, bear his children, and run his household, all while being watched and judged by a court that sees you as an outsider. When? It's all you can manage to ask. When will your life as you know it end? The betrothal will be announced at Michaelmas. The wedding will take place next spring after you turn 14. Your father finally looks at you directly. This is a good match. Better than I hoped for. You will bring honor to our family. Translation: be grateful. Some girls get sold off to men 3 times their age. Some get sent to foreign courts even more distant and strange. Some get married to secure peace with enemies who hate them from the moment they arrive. By medieval royal standards, this is actually a decent arrangement. Yes, father, you say, because there's nothing else to say. No point in crying or begging. It won't change anything. This is your duty. This is what you were born for. As you leave your father's chamber, you realize that your life as you've known it, already restricted and controlled, now has an expiration date. You have less than a year left in your home, with the people you know, speaking the language you understand. After that, you belong to France, to Philip, to a life that's being thrust upon you without your consent. Alice is waiting outside the door. One look at your face tells her everything. France? She asks quietly. You nod. The second son? A small ray of hope in her voice. You nod again. Well, she says, trying to find something positive. At least he won't be king. Less pressure on you. Small comfort. Second sons still expect heirs, still have political responsibilities, still have complete control over their wives. But Alice is right about one thing. Not being queen consort does mean slightly less scrutiny, slightly lower stakes. Come, Alice says, guiding you back toward your chambers. It's time for your lessons. And so your day continues. You don't get to fall apart, don't get to process this life-changing news. There's no therapist to talk to, no understanding parent to comfort you. There's just the relentless schedule of a medieval princess's day. Prayers, meals, lessons, more prayers, more meals, maybe some supervised recreation if you're lucky, and then bed. The same tomorrow, and the next day. Until you're shipped off to France to begin your real purpose, making babies and securing alliances. This is the reality of being a medieval princess, not fairy tales, not romance, not freedom, just duty, restriction, and the constant looming knowledge that your body isn't your own. And this is just the morning of your day. The rest, even more controlled, even more focused on preparing you for the one thing that matters, being valuable marriage material. As you follow Alice back to your cold chamber, where you'll spend the next few hours practicing needlework or learning French, suddenly, very important, you catch yourself wondering what it would be like to be one of those squires instead, to hold a sword instead of a needle, to have choices instead of obligations. But those thoughts are dangerous. Better to accept your fate. Better to be the good, obedient daughter and future wife, because in medieval Europe, for a princess, that's the only way to survive, and survival, not happiness, is the best you can hope for. Alice leads you back to your chamber, where several other ladies are waiting. They're all from noble families, sent to serve you and learn the ways of court alongside you. They're not exactly friends. True friendship isn't really a concept that exists in the same way for medieval nobility. These girls are both your servants and your competition, watching your every move and reporting back to their families about the princess they serve. Lady Catherine will be here shortly for your French lessons, Alice says, helping you change into a simpler gown more suitable for sitting and studying. Your father says you'll need extra practice now. Of course he does. The clock is ticking on your transformation from English princess to French bride. Learning the language isn't just about communication, it's about survival. The chamber feels slightly warmer now that the morning fire has been burning for a while. Your ladies busy themselves around the room preparing your study materials. One of them, Margaret, who's about your age, looks at you with sympathy in her eyes. She knows what it means to be married off to a foreign court. Her sister was sent to Scotland last year and hasn't been heard from since. I hear the French court is very grand, Margaret offers, trying to be helpful, much more refined than ours. What she doesn't say, but you both know, is that the French will find every flaw in your manners, your speech, your appearance. You'll be judged mercilessly as the foreign bride, the outsider. No matter how well you prepare, it won't be enough. Lady Catherine arrives, and your heart sinks. She's a stern, thin-lipped woman who spent time in the French court in her youth and never lets anyone forget it. She carries a small wooden paddle that she uses to rap your knuckles when you mispronounce a word. By the end of most lessons, your fingers are red and swollen. "Bonjour, mademoiselle," she says sharply, not bothering with pleasantries in English. "Nous avons beaucoup à faire aujourd'hui." You stare at her blankly. You've been learning French for years. All noble children do, since it's the language of diplomacy, but you're nowhere near fluent, and now, suddenly, your entire future depends on how quickly you can master it. "She said we have much to do today," Margaret whispers, earning herself a glare from Lady Catherine. "En français," Lady Catherine snaps, pointing at you. "Répétez après moi. Je suis la princesse d'Angleterre." You try. God, you try. Je suis la princesse d'Angleterre. Whack, the paddle comes down on your knuckles. Pain shoots up your arm, but you don't cry out. Princesses don't show pain. Again, Lady Catherine demands, "Je suis la princesse d'Angleterre." And so it goes, for 2 excruciating hours. Your tongue twists around unfamiliar sounds. Your throat tightens with the effort of producing nasal vowels that don't exist in English. Your knuckles throb. By the end, you can barely make a fist. What they don't tell you in fairy tales is that medieval education, especially for girls, was often brutal. There was no concept of positive reinforcement, no gold stars for effort. There was only success or failure, and failure meant punishment. "Better," Lady Catherine finally says, though her face shows no satisfaction. "Tomorrow we will work on court etiquette. The French have different customs. You must not embarrass your family." As if you needed the reminder, as if the weight of your entire kingdom's diplomatic relations doesn't already rest on your adolescent shoulders. Lady Catherine leaves, and you flex your fingers, wincing. One of your ladies rushes forward with a small pot of salve made from herbs grown in the castle garden. This too is part of your education, learning which plants heal, which soothe, which poison. Medieval medical knowledge was primitive by our standards, but it was comprehensive in its own way, passed down from woman to woman across generations. "Time for your needlework, my lady," Alice announces, as another lady brings forward your embroidery frame. "This, at least, is something you're good at. All noble girls learn needlework from the time they can hold a needle. It's not just decorative, it's practical. In a world before mass production, everything must be made by hand. Queens and peasants alike spend hours every day with needle and thread, making and mending clothing, linens, tapestries. Your current project is a complex religious scene showing the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel telling Mary she'll bear the Son of God. The symbolism isn't lost on you. Like Mary, you have no choice but to accept the fate handed to you by men who claim to speak with authority. The work is detailed and demanding. You're using silk threads imported at great expense from the East, dyed in vibrant colours that cost more than what a peasant family might earn in a year. The gold thread you're using for the angel's halo is actual gold, pounded thin and wrapped around a silk core. Your family's wealth, literally woven into fabric. Smaller stitches, Alice reminds you, inspecting your work. A French lady would use stitches so small they can hardly be seen. You sigh and pull out the last row, starting again. Your back aches from hunching over the frame, your eyes strain in the dim light coming through the narrow window. Even on bright days, medieval castles are dark inside. Candles and oil lamps are expensive, so you work mostly by daylight, which means your productive hours are limited, especially in winter. Tell me about the French court, you say to Alice as you work. What should I expect? Alice purses her lips. It's more formal than here, more political. Everyone watching everyone else, looking for advantages, for weaknesses. Sounds awful, you mutter, pricking your finger for the third time. A drop of blood stains the white linen. You'll have to work it into the pattern somehow. It's survival, Alice corrects you. Court life is a battlefield without swords. Words are the weapons, alliances are the armour, and unlike men, women can't settle disputes with a duel. We must be cleverer, more patient. This, too, is part of your education, learning the unwritten rules of court life, how to read people's intentions behind their formal words, how to navigate the treacherous waters of noble politics, where a single misstep could mean disaster not just for you, but for your entire family. Will you come with me, you ask suddenly, to France? Alice's face softens. If your father permits it. Some of us will accompany you, though many of your ladies in France will be French, chosen by your husband's family to help you adjust. To spy on you, she means, to report your every word and deed back to your new family. To make sure your loyalties shift appropriately from England to France. The morning passes in silence after that, broken only by the soft sounds of needles through fabric and the occasional instruction from Alice. Your thoughts drift to what awaits you in France. Will your husband be kind? Will you be allowed to bring your favourite books? Will anyone there care about what you want, what you think, what you feel? You know the answer. No one cares now. Why would that change in France? Midday approaches, and it's time to change clothes again for the meal. This time you're dressed more formally, as there are visitors to the castle, minor nobles from nearby estates coming to pay respects to your father and, incidentally, to get a look at you, the princess who's made such an advantageous match. You're a curiosity now, a success story in the medieval marriage market. Your value has just increased significantly. The great hall is noisy and crowded when you enter. Trestle tables have been set up in rows, with your family's high table on a raised platform at the front. The stone floor is covered with fresh rushes mixed with herbs that release their scent when crushed underfoot, helping to mask the smells of so many people in one space. You take your place at the high table, careful to observe all the proper formalities, back straight, eyes modestly lowered, hands folded, silent unless spoken to, the perfect medieval lady, giving no one any reason to criticize. The meal is more elaborate than breakfast. Roasted meats, fish, bread, cheese, seasonal vegetables prepared with expensive spices. Wine flows freely. You eat little, your stomach still tight with anxiety about your future. Besides, it's not ladylike to show too much appetite. Medieval beauty standards for noble women prize daintiness, paleness, and delicacy. The one ethereal look that comes from never getting enough sun or food was considered attractive. The plump, rosy-cheeked ideal came much later. "My daughter," your father calls down the table, making you jump. "Lady Catherine tells me your French still needs work." You feel dozens of eyes turn to you. Heat rises in your cheeks. "Yes, father, I'm trying. Try harder," he says bluntly. "I won't have the French court laughing at English education." You nod, eyes lowered again, humiliation burning through you. Public criticism is just another tool in the medieval parenting arsenal. Shame as motivation, fear as incentive. "Perhaps the princess would benefit from a French lady-in-waiting," suggests one of the visiting nobles, "someone who could speak with her throughout the day." Your father considers this, then nods. "A practical suggestion. I'll arrange it." And just like that, another decision about your life is made without your input. Another stranger will be thrust into your intimate daily routine. Another person to judge you, to find you wanting. After the meal, you're allowed a brief period of recreation in the castle garden. It's one of the few times in your day when you're permitted outdoors, and even then, you're closely supervised. Medieval noble girls don't run, don't shout, don't climb trees, or play rough games like boys do. Your recreation consists of sedate walks along garden paths, perhaps some gentle ball games or dancing practice. The garden itself is nothing like our modern idea of ornamental gardens. It's primarily functional. Herbs for cooking and medicine, vegetables, fruit trees. Beauty is secondary to utility in medieval life. Tell me about Prince Philip, you say to Alice as you walk. What do you know of him? Alice hesitates. He's 17, she finally says. 4 years your senior. They say he's interested in scholarly pursuits. That could mean anything from a genuine intellectual to a weak boy unfit for military training. In a world where physical prowess is prized above all for men, being scholarly isn't necessarily a compliment. They say he's kind to his servants, Alice adds, as if sensing your disappointment. That's rare enough to be remarked upon. It's something. At least, kindness isn't a quality much valued in medieval nobility, especially in men. Power, strength, cunning. These are the traits that matter. If Philip is known for kindness, perhaps your life with him won't be completely miserable. Will I at least get to meet him before the wedding? You ask. Alice shakes her head. Unlikely. The marriage negotiations will be conducted by proxies. You'll probably meet him for the first time at the ceremony. Medieval royal marriages weren't about compatibility or love. They were business arrangements, political alliances sealed with vows and consummated with bodies. The idea that you should meet your spouse beforehand, let alone have anything in common with them, would have seemed absurd to medieval nobility. Your afternoon lessons begin after your brief garden respite. These focus on household management, the skills you'll need as the lady of a grand estate, because that's what a princess becomes after marriage, the manager of her husband's household, responsible for everything from provisioning the kitchens to overseeing the servants to maintaining the accounts. Brother Thomas, a monk from the nearby abbey who serves as the castle's clerk and accountant, arrives with his wax tablets and stylus. Today's lesson is on household expenditures, how to track what's spent, what's saved, what's wasted. A well-run household reflects God's order, Brother Thomas intones, his voice as dry as the parchment he carries. Wastefulness is a sin, carelessness is a sin, ignorance of your resources is a sin. Everything is a sin in medieval Christianity. The fear of hell permeates every aspect of life, every decision, every thought. It's the ultimate control mechanism in a world already rigidly controlled by social hierarchies. Brother Thomas sets a tablet before you, covered in neat rows of Roman numerals. Calculate the cost of provisioning the kitchen for 1 month based on these figures, he instructs. It's tedious, painstaking work. Arabic numerals exist but aren't widely used yet in Europe. Calculations that would take us seconds with modern math take you long, frustrating minutes. There are no shortcuts, no calculators, not even the simple convenience of positional notation that makes our base 10 system so efficient. Your head aches with the effort of converting measures and values. How many shillings to the pound? How many pence to the shilling? How many bushels of wheat to feed? How many people for how many days? The variables seem endless. You must know these things, Brother Thomas says sharply, when you make an error. A lady who cannot manage her household is at the mercy of dishonest stewards and thieving servants. He's right, of course. In the medieval world, numeracy is as important as literacy for a noble lady. You'll be responsible for managing vast estates, overseeing hundreds of servants and workers. If you can't keep track of resources, can't budget properly, can't detect when you're being cheated, your household will fall into disarray. And that reflects poorly not just on you, but on your husband. After mathematics comes music, another essential skill for a medieval lady, not because anyone cares about your personal fulfillment or creative expression, but because accomplishments like music making increase your value as a diplomatic asset. A princess who can entertain at court is more useful than one who can't. Sister Agnes from the convent arrives with a small harp. Unlike the massive concert harps we think of today, medieval harps were portable instruments that could be played while seated in a lady's chamber. "Your fingering has improved," Sister Agnes says, as you pluck carefully at the strings, producing a simple melody, "but your timing still falters in the middle section." Music in medieval Europe was primarily religious. Hymns, psalms, simple devotional pieces. Secular music existed too, of course, but it wasn't considered entirely proper for young noble ladies to sing the popular love songs of troubadours. Those came later when courtly love became fashionable. Your music lesson is cut short when your mother's messenger arrives. "The Queen requests your presence," the woman says with a curtsy. Your mother? The Queen? Even in your thoughts, you don't think of her informally. Medieval parent-child relationships, especially in royal families, weren't characterized by casual warmth. Respect, duty, and proper distance were the norm. You follow the messenger through the winding corridors to your mother's chambers, larger and more luxurious than your own, befitting her status. Inside, you find her surrounded by her ladies, all working on an enormous tapestry stretched on a frame that takes up half the room. "Daughter," she acknowledges you with a nod. "Come see what we're making for your wedding." The tapestry shows a symbolic joining of your family's crest with that of the French royal family. The workmanship is exquisite. Your mother is known throughout the kingdom for her skill with a needle. This tapestry will travel with you to France, a visual reminder of the political alliance your body is sealing. "It's beautiful," you say, because it is, despite what it represents. "Sit," your mother commands, indicating a stool near her. "Work on this section. The French court will judge your needlework harshly. You must not shame us." You take your place and begin stitching, adding tiny, precise stitches to the border pattern. Your mother watches critically, occasionally correcting your technique. This, too, is education, learning from the woman who's lived the life you're about to begin. A life of duty, obligation, and carefully concealed emotion. "I've heard about the French match," your mother says after a while, her voice low enough that only you can hear. "It's better than I hoped for. Prince Philip has a reputation for gentleness. Coming from your mother, this is practically gushing approval." You glance at her, surprised by this almost expression of concern for your welfare. "Will it hurt?" you ask, your voice barely audible. You both know what you're asking about: the wedding night, the consummation that will make the political alliance real and binding. Your mother's face remains impassive, her eyes on her needlework. "Yes," she says simply, "but it passes, and then it becomes tolerable in time. Tolerable, not pleasurable, not joyful, just tolerable." That's the best a medieval queen can offer her daughter by way of marital advice. "Remember your duty," she continues, still not looking at you. "Provide heirs, manage his household, bring honour to both families. The rest is unimportant. The rest being your happiness, your desires, your personhood, all unimportant in the grand scheme of medieval political marriage." "Yes, mother," you say, because there's nothing else to say. You work in silence after that, adding stitches to a tapestry that symbolises your fate. The irony isn't lost on you. With every stitch, you're literally helping to create the artifact of your own subjugation. But that's the nature of being a medieval princess. You're both the commodity being traded and the craftsperson preparing yourself for market. As the afternoon wears on, you're summoned for yet another lesson, this one in religious instruction with Father Ambrose, the castle's chaplain. Religion wasn't just a Sunday activity in medieval Europe. It was woven into every moment of every day, especially for women who were considered morally weaker than men and thus in need of constant spiritual guidance. Father Ambrose is ancient, with rheumy eyes and gnarled hands that tremble slightly as he opens his prayer book. He's been instructing you since you were a small child, teaching you the catechism, the lives of the saints, the proper prayers for every occasion. Today, we will discuss the duties of a wife, he announces, making your heart sink. Even the church is preparing you for your new role. A wife must be obedient in all things, Father Ambrose begins, his voice reedy but firm. As the church submits to Christ, so must you submit to your husband. You've heard this countless times before. The Bible, interpreted through the lens of medieval Christianity, is very clear on a woman's place: subordinate, silent, submissive. A wife must be fruitful, he continues. Children are God's blessing, and to refuse them is a mortal sin. What he doesn't say, but what hangs in the air between you, is the danger that comes with this blessing. Childbirth kills countless women every year. Queens and peasants alike die bringing new life into the world. You've seen it happen. Ladies of the court who disappeared to their chambers for confinement and never emerged again. A wife must be modest, temperate, patient, and kind, Father Ambrose drones on. She must guard her tongue, her thoughts, and her actions, for she carries her husband's honour as well as her own. In other words, you have the responsibility without the authority, the blame without the power, the classic double bind of medieval womanhood. The lesson continues with example after example of virtuous wives from Scripture and the lives of saints, women who endured abuse, neglect, even torture without complaint, women who sacrificed everything for their husbands, their children, their faith, women whose only reward came after death. Is this what awaits you in France? A life of silent endurance, of hidden suffering, of swallowed words and buried feelings? By the time Father Ambrose finally closes his book, the sun is setting. Your day of education is nearly complete, but there's one final lesson before supper: dancing, because a princess who can't perform the complex court dances will be an embarrassment to her family and her husband. Master Henri, the dancing master brought from France specifically to teach you the latest court dances, waits in the great hall. He's thin and elegant, with a perpetual expression of barely concealed disdain for the English court he considers provincial and backward. "Mademoiselle," he greets you with a bow that somehow manages to be both proper and ironic. Today we practice the basse danse, very important at the French court, very elegant. You take your position back straight, chin up, arms positioned just so. The musicians, 3 men with lute, recorder and small drum, begin to play. The basse dance is slow and stately, a processional dance where the steps must be precise, the timing perfect, the overall effect one of controlled grace. It's harder than it looks. Medieval dancing isn't the free-form movement we think of today. It's rigidly choreographed, full of symbolic gestures and formal patterns. Every step, every turn, every hand position has meaning, and all of it must be performed while wearing heavy, restrictive clothing, maintaining perfect posture, and never, ever looking like you're exerting yourself. Non, non, non. Master Henri interrupts, clapping his hands sharply. The 3rd step is back, then left. You go left, then back. All wrong again. And so you begin again, and again, and again. Your feet ache in your thin slippers. Your back screams from the unnatural posture. Sweat trickles down your spine, making your gown stick uncomfortably to your skin. But you don't complain, you don't ask for a rest, you don't show any sign of fatigue or frustration, because princesses don't do that. They endure, they persist, they perfect themselves for the roles they're required to play. After what feels like hours, Master Henri finally pronounces your performance acceptable, barely, and dismisses you to prepare for the evening meal. You return to your chamber, where your ladies help you change, again, into your formal evening attire. As Alice brushes your hair, now allowed to be worn loose for the evening since you're still unmarried, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished metal mirror on your dressing table. Not glass. Glass mirrors exist, but are incredibly rare and expensive. This reflection is dimmer, less defined, like looking at yourself through water. The face that looks back at you is young, so young, with traces of childhood still visible in the roundness of your cheeks, but your eyes look older, tired, resigned. This has been just one day in your education as a medieval princess, one day of countless identical days, all designed to shape you into something useful to your family and your future husband, not to prepare you for a fulfilling life of your own choosing. That concept doesn't exist, but to make you a valuable asset in the medieval political landscape. Tomorrow there will be more French lessons, more religious instruction, more household management training, the day after, the same, and the day after that, until spring comes and you're shipped off to France like a well-trained horse being delivered to its new owner. You turn away from the mirror as Alice fastens a gold circlet around your head, the visible symbol of your rank, the gilded cage of your privilege. "It's time for supper, my lady," she says softly. "Your father will be waiting." You nod and rise, arranging your features into the serene mask expected of a princess. Whatever you're feeling, fear, resentment, grief for the life you'll never have, must remain hidden. That, perhaps, is the most important lesson of your education. True feelings are a luxury medieval princesses cannot afford. You walk to the great hall for supper, flanked by your ladies. The corridors are busier now than earlier in the day, servants hurrying to and fro with platters and pitchers, guards changing shifts, visitors preparing to dine with your family. The castle is like a small town, with hundreds of people living and working within its walls, and you, as the princess, are at the centre of it all, watched, judged, discussed. The great hall blazes with light now, dozens of candles and torches illuminating the space for the evening meal. It's the brightest the castle gets, and the warmest, with so many bodies packed into the stone room. The smell is a mix of food, smoke, sweat, and the herbs crushed underfoot in the rushes on the floor. As you enter, a hush falls briefly over the closest tables. People nudge each other, whisper behind hands. There she is, the princess, the one going to France, the one making such a good match. You pretend not to notice, keeping your eyes modestly lowered as you make your way to the high table. Your father is already seated, deep in conversation with the most important visitor, a bishop from a neighbouring diocese, his purple robes marking his rank. Your mother sits at your father's left, silent but watchful, her eyes taking in everything. You take your place a few seats down, where you're expected to make conversation with the bishop's secretary, a thin, nervous man with ink-stained fingers. This, too, is part of your duty, entertaining guests, making them feel welcome, representing your family's hospitality. But there are rules, strict rules about what a princess can discuss. "I trust your journey was pleasant, sir?" You begin with the expected pleasantry. He nods, clearly uncomfortable at dining with royalty. "Yes, Your Highness, most pleasant." "And your work for the bishop? It must be fascinating." Another safe topic, a man's work. You can ask about it, express appropriate admiration, but never suggest you understand it or could do it yourself. The secretary relaxes slightly, launching into a description of manuscripts copied and letters written. You listen with practiced attention, making all the right noises of interest at all the right moments. This is a skill you've been developing since childhood, seeming engaged while your mind wanders elsewhere. Servants move around the hall, bringing platters of food to each table according to rank. The high table is served first, of course, and gets the best portions, the tenderest cuts of meat, the whitest bread, the richest sauces. Food in medieval Europe is as much about status as nourishment. The first course arrives, a soup of leeks and almond milk, served in shared bowls. Two people typically share each bowl, another reminder that privacy doesn't exist here. You're paired with the secretary, who looks terrified at the prospect of potentially touching spoons with a princess. "Please," you say, gesturing for him to begin. "Always defer to male guests." Another rule. The meal progresses through multiple courses: fish in a saffron sauce, roasted capon, a pie filled with spiced meat. Each dish is heavily seasoned, not just for flavour, but to demonstrate wealth. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg. These spices cost a fortune, imported along trade routes that stretch across the known world. You eat sparingly, as expected. A lady with too hearty an appetite is considered unrefined, possibly even sinful. Gluttony is, after all, one of the 7 deadly sins. Besides, the heavy, rich food sits uneasily in your stomach, still knotted with anxiety about your future. Your father stands, raising his cup in a toast to the bishop. Everyone falls silent, waiting for the king to speak. His words are formal, full of references to church and state, the bonds between secular and religious power. Politics, always politics, even at the dinner table. The bishop responds with equal formality, though you notice his eyes wandering occasionally to the serving girls moving between tables. Not all churchmen live up to their vows of chastity. It's an open secret at court, something everyone knows, but no one mentions directly. As the meal draws to a close, musicians begin to play from a gallery above the hall. Not the formal dance music you've been learning, but livelier tunes for entertainment. Your father signals to you, an almost imperceptible nod. This is your cue. Part of your duty as princess is to demonstrate your accomplishments to honoured guests. You rise and move to join the musicians, where a harp has been placed ready for you. All eyes turn to you as you sit, arranging your gown carefully, positioning your fingers on the strings. The hall quiets. This is a performance, a display of your family's culture and refinement through your skill. You begin to play, a religious piece that showcases both technical ability and proper piety. Your fingers move smoothly over the strings, producing clear, sweet notes that rise to the timbered ceiling. Years of practice, hours of repetition, countless corrections from tutors, all for moments like this when you serve as a living ornament to your father's court. When you finish, there's appreciative applause. The bishop nods his approval. Your father looks satisfied. Your mother's face shows nothing, but when you return to your seat, she touches your hand briefly, the closest thing to public praise you'll ever receive from her. The entertainment continues with professional musicians and a troupe of acrobats, a special treat for the bishop's visit. You watch with suitable appreciation, though these performers are regulars at court, and you've seen their acts many times before. As the evening wears on, your father stands, signalling the end of the formal meal. This is when the men will withdraw to discuss serious matters: politics, church business, warfare, while the women return to their chambers. The gender division is absolute in medieval court life. You rise with your mother and the other ladies, curtsying to your father and the bishop before withdrawing. The secretary looks almost relieved to see you go. Maintaining conversation with a princess was clearly stressful for him. But your day isn't over yet. As you return to your chambers, Alice informs you that a message has come from the steward. There's a matter requiring your attention in the kitchens. Now? You ask, surprised. It's unusual for such things to come up in the evening. The bishop's party brought additional mouths to feed, Alice explains. There's a question about tomorrow's provisions. This is a reminder of your other role, not just ornamental princess, but lady of the castle, responsible for the practical running of a huge household. Medieval noble women weren't just decorative. They were managers of complex domestic operations. You follow Alice down winding stairs to the kitchen area. Unlike the Great Hall, which at least makes a pretense of elegance, the working areas of a medieval castle are purely functional. The kitchens are hot, smoky spaces with massive hearths for cooking, tables for preparation, and storage areas for provisions. The kitchen staff bow or curtsy as you enter, depending on their gender. The head cook, a stout woman named Agnes with forearms like a blacksmith's from years of hauling pots, approaches with a worried expression. "Begging your pardon, my lady," she says, wiping her hands on her apron. "But with the bishop's men we're short on saltfish for tomorrow's meal, it being Friday and all." Friday. A fast day in the Christian calendar when meat is forbidden. Fish is the main alternative, and apparently the kitchen stores are running low. This is the kind of practical problem that falls to the lady of the castle, not important enough for the king to concern himself with, but essential to the smooth running of the household and the proper observation of religious customs. How many extra men came with the bishop, you ask, automatically falling into your role as household manager? 12, my lady, plus their horses needing feed. You think for a moment, mentally calculating the stores you know are available. This kind of inventory management is something you've been trained in since childhood, knowing exactly what resources the castle has, how long they'll last, when they need replenishing. "We have the salt herring in the north storeroom," you say. "It was meant for next week, but we can use that and send to the abbey tomorrow for more, and serve more bread and vegetable pottage to fill their bellies." Agnes nods, looking relieved. "Yes, my lady, wise thinking that is." This small moment of decision-making, this tiny exercise of authority, feels strangely satisfying in the grand scheme of your life as a medieval princess. Your choices are few and constrained, but in the domestic sphere you do have some power, some control. As you turn to leave, you notice a young scullery maid watching you with wide eyes. She can't be more than 9 or 10, her face smudged with ash from the hearth, her hands raw from work and water. She reminds you of yourself at that age, except her future holds only more of the same hard labour, while yours at least has the gilded cage of royalty. On an impulse, you smile at her. She looks startled, then shyly smiles back before ducking her head and scurrying back to her work. It's a tiny human connection across the vast gulf of medieval social hierarchy. A princess and a kitchen maid, both girls, both bound by the rigid expectations of their stations, neither with much say in her own destiny. You climb back up to the main level of the castle, Alice trailing behind you. The corridors are quieter now, the frenetic energy of the mealtime settling into the slower rhythm of evening. Guards stand at their posts, servants move more leisurely about their tasks, and the castle prepares for night. But your duties aren't quite done. Next comes a visit to the still room, the domain of the castle's herbalist, an older woman named Marjorie, who manages the preparation and storage of medicinal herbs, cosmetics, and household necessities like soap and candles. The The still room is one of your favourite places in the castle. It smells wonderful, a mix of dried herbs, honey, beeswax, and the various distillations Marjorie creates. It's also primarily a female space where women's knowledge of plants and healing is respected and valued. Marjorie curtsies as you enter, then immediately returns to her work of grinding dried herbs with a mortar and pestle. She's one of the few people in the castle who treats you with minimal ceremony, perhaps because she's old enough to have seen you born, perhaps because the practical nature of her work leaves little room for court formalities. "The lavender salve is ready," she says without preamble, "and I've prepared more of the rose water you like for washing." "Thank you," you say, genuinely grateful. The rose water is a small luxury in a life that, despite its privilege, has few personal comforts. "Sit," Marjorie instructs, nodding to a stool. "Let me see your hands." You obey, holding out your hands for inspection. Despite all the care taken to preserve a princess's beauty, your hands show the effects of constant needlework. Tiny pricks and calluses that no amount of salve can completely prevent. Marjorie tuts disapprovingly, taking a small pot from a shelf and beginning to apply a sweet-smelling ointment to your fingers. "French ladies wear gloves to keep their hands soft," she observes. "You should do the same. This is the kind of practical advice you value. Concrete suggestions for navigating court life offered without the crushing weight of moral instruction that accompanies most advice from your official tutors. "Will you show me how to make this before I go?" you ask, nodding to the salve. "So I can prepare it in France?" Marjorie smiles, pleased by your interest. "Of course, though they may have different herbs available there. We'll need to discuss alternatives." This exchange might seem insignificant, but it represents another small pocket of agency in your tightly controlled life. Learning practical skills, building knowledge that's yours alone, these are tiny rebellions against a system that values you primarily as a political token and a potential broodmare. Off to the still room, there's one more duty before you can retire for the night. Evening prayers in the chapel. Religion isn't just a set of beliefs in medieval Europe, it's the framework that structures time itself. Days begin and end with prayer, weeks are marked by Sundays and feast days, seasons by religious festivals. The chapel is dimmer now than it was for morning prayers, lit only by a few candles that cast long shadows across the stone walls. The space feels more intimate, more mysterious in this half-light. You kneel on the hard stone floor, ignoring the discomfort as you've been taught to do. Physical discomfort is considered good for the soul, a small taste of Christ's suffering, a reminder of human frailty. Father Ambrose leads the prayers, his voice echoing in the quiet space. Your father isn't present, he's still closeted with the bishop, but your mother kneels beside you, her lips moving silently with the familiar words. You wonder, not for the first time, what she truly thinks behind her impassive exterior. Was she once like you, a young princess sent to a foreign court, expected to adapt, to bear children, to represent her family's interests? Does she ever resent the constraints of her role? Or has she simply accepted them so completely that she no longer questions? These aren't questions you can ask. The gap between mother and daughter in medieval royal families isn't just generational, it's institutional. Queens and princesses have official roles to play, and emotional intimacy isn't part of the script. Evening prayers conclude, and at last your official duties for the day are done. You return to your chamber, where your ladies help you prepare for bed. The elaborate gown comes off, replaced by a simple linen shift for sleeping. Your hair is brushed and braided for the night. A warming pan filled with hot coals is passed between the sheets of your bed to take the worst chill off the linen. Outside, the castle settles into its nighttime routine. Guards change shifts, calling out to each other from the battlements. Servants bank fires to keep them burning slowly through the night. In the great hall, some of the household knights and squires prepare their pallets for sleeping. Dogs curl up near the kitchen hearths, waiting for morning scraps. The massive gates are checked and barred against the dangers of the world outside. This is the rhythm of castle life, the same patterns repeated day after day, the same duties performed in the same order, the same prayers said at the same hours. There's comfort in the familiarity, even as you know your place in this pattern will soon change dramatically. As you slip between the slightly warmed sheets of your bed, one of your ladies, Margaret, the one whose sister was sent to Scotland, sits nearby with a small candle ready to read aloud until you fall asleep. This is a luxury afforded to a princess, someone to ease your transition to sleep with words. "What shall I read tonight, my lady?" Margaret asks, holding up several options: a book of saints' lives, a collection of prayers, or a volume of more secular tales that somehow made its way into the castle library. The tales, you decide, feeling slightly rebellious. Stories of adventure and romance are considered somewhat frivolous for young ladies, potentially dangerous to moral character, but tonight you want to escape, at least in your mind, to worlds where things happen differently than in your tightly prescribed reality. Margaret begins to read, her voice soft in the dim chamber. The story tells of knights and quests, magical forests and mysterious castles. It bears little resemblance to the actual life of medieval nobility you experience daily, but that's precisely its appeal. Your other ladies settle onto their pallets on the floor, listening as they prepare for sleep. Alice sits mending by the dying fire, her needle flashing in the low light. The chamber grows quiet except for Margaret's voice and the occasional pop from the hearth. Outside, you can hear the night watch calling the hours. 10 o'clock and all's well. Their voices carry across the castle bailey, a reminder that even in darkness, the structures of medieval life continue. Someone is always watching, always guarding, always maintaining the boundaries that keep each person in their proper place. Your eyes grow heavy as Margaret reads on. The day's lessons and duties, anxieties and small triumphs blur together as sleep approaches. Tomorrow will bring more of the same. More French lessons, more religious instruction, more preparation for your role as a French prince's wife. But for now, in these quiet moments between waking and sleeping, you allow yourself to imagine alternatives. What if you weren't born a princess? What if you could choose your own path? What if the world were arranged differently, with girls valued for more than their marriage prospects and childbearing capacity? These are dangerous thoughts, bordering on the sinful. Father Ambrose would certainly assign penance if he knew you questioned the divine order that placed you in your privileged but constrained position. But in the privacy of your own mind, as you drift towards sleep, you permit yourself this small rebellion. Margaret's voice grows more distant as you slip toward dreams. The story she reads mingles with your own thoughts, creating impossible scenarios where princesses rescue themselves, choose their own husbands, or decide not to marry at all, where your value isn't determined by your family connections, or your intact maidenhead, or your potential to bear sons. In reality, your path is set. In a few months, you'll leave everything you know for a foreign court and a stranger's bed. You'll be expected to adapt, to represent English interests while becoming French in your loyalties, to produce heirs that strengthen the alliance between two sometimes hostile kingdoms. It's a heavy burden for young shoulders, this weight of international politics and dynastic ambitions, but it's the burden every medieval princess carries, has always carried, will continue to carry for generations to come. As sleep finally claims you, your last conscious thought is a question. In the future, will girls still be used as political pawns? Or will a time come when princesses, when all women, might determine their own destinies? History, if it could answer, would tell you that change comes slowly, painfully, incompletely, that centuries will pass before women gain even the most basic rights to their own lives, their own bodies, their own futures, that even in times far beyond your imagining, the struggle for true equality will continue. But tonight you sleep untroubled by such knowledge. Tomorrow brings another day of duties and lessons, preparations and obligations, another day of being a medieval princess, privileged, constrained and ultimately expendable in the great game of royal politics. The weeks pass in the same pattern of prayers, lessons and duties. Winter gradually loosens its grip on the castle, and the first tentative signs of spring appear. Snowdrops pushing through the frosty ground in the garden, slightly longer daylight hours, the occasional warmer day that offers a brief respite from the bone-deep cold. And with spring comes the accelerating preparations for your departure to France. You wake one morning to unusual activity in the castle. Servants hurry through the corridors with purpose, and there's a tension in the air that wasn't there the night before. What's happening? You ask Alice as she helps you dress. The French delegation has arrived early, she says, her hands moving quickly to fasten your gown. They're expected in the great hall within the hour. Your father has requested your presence. Your heart skips. The French delegation, the official party sent to finalise the marriage arrangements and escort you back to France. You knew they were coming, of course, but not so soon, not today, without warning. Is Prince Philip with them? You ask, trying to keep your voice steady. Alice shakes her head. No, my lady, just his representatives. The marriage will still be by proxy here. Of course, royal marriages often happened this way. A stand-in would represent your future husband at the ceremony here in England, and you wouldn't meet the actual prince until you arrived in France. It was more practical this way, given the dangers and delays of medieval travel, but it also meant you'd be officially married to a man you'd never even seen.